Hi guys, Pingow here. Welcome to another episode of New Falmouth. So, in today's episode, we are going to be doing a bit of highway construction. I need to work out the positioning of the infrastructure for the main roads in the city. Certainly the highways, which I've been really should have done before, to be honest. It's taken me this long to get round to actually putting some of these highways down. I think most people find with building cities, you do need to get some of your big infrastructure areas done first of all. So I have been a little bit lax in waiting this long to get to this stage, but I felt it was probably at the right time to start to add in a little bit more detail and put down these freeways. Try to not so much connect the city up to the game, because it is already connected up, but it's more a question of just putting down where the freeways are going to be going, certainly those that are closer to the centre of the city, because really those freeways and highways are going to be defining the city, defining the different districts, and they will have a lot of impact on the city as a whole in terms of how I plan the different areas out. So although in reality highways may be a kind of later introduction to most cities, in the game generally I find that you've got to kind of work out where you want your highways first of all, and then build your city almost around those, which is, I guess, a little bit different to reality, and in some respects, because New Falmouth is quite old, I want some of the areas to look as if the highways have been introduced, in the last 30-40 years, which means the planning of the city will need to look as if it has had highways kind of built through it. So whether that be a grid system which is then broken up with a highway, or something that gives it the appearance that the highway is a later addition rather than something that's been put down to begin with. But the first thing is what I'm doing here is just to try and improve some of these kind of intersections that I put down for the power plant. This was always a temporary intersection. It was just purely so that I could get the power plant functioning, but now I'm designing or putting down a more kind of finished example of a very simple junction. And most of the junctions, I'm not using the CSUR mod. That particular mod is a slightly scary looking beast, and I don't think I really have the patience to try and learn that. It has some impressive looking ways of building realistic intersections and freeways, let's just say, but it does look kind of horrendously complicated. I'm sure people out there have used it, and I'm sure you'll say it's not, but for this city and probably for the foreseeable future, I'm going to be just using Move It and tweaking it like this rather than doing anything too fancy. And I think generally the look of these highways and intersections is fine. They might not be the most realistic, but I think they're absolutely fine for my needs. So I think going forward, I'm just going to be predominantly using Move It to tweak my highways and intersections. Okay, so this is Highway 2 that I'm working on at the moment, and Highway 2 is the main kind of northern access point for New Falmouth. It runs across the northern shore of the Falmouth River, and it ends up in Sycamore Beach, which is I need to do a little map, I think, to show you guys the different areas of where I'm planning to build the city and the suburbs, because at the moment it's all a little bit vague. But Sycamore Beach is a kind of suburb or a suburban town of New Falmouth, and it's obviously on the beach, and that's where the Highway 2 ends up. Highway 2 has a little spur, a little kind of intersection which serves the swing bridge, Fort Keene Bridge, which is obviously one of the main access points to the city itself. But there is another freeway, which is Freeway or Highway 9, And this highway is connected by a trumpet interchange. Now, I haven't done a trumpet interchange before, I don't think, in this game. I've done similar sort of intersections, but not a true trumpet. So this was quite an interesting little build for me in terms of positioning all these roads and everything. It's not a technically challenging intersection of trumpet, but you do need to get it looking kind of right in terms of symmetry and stuff like that. So Highway 9 will in effect cross back over the river. So this is where a bridge will be placed, which is called Warner Bridge, and Warner Bridge will serve the northern shore of New Falmouth. So it in effect runs down through the northern part of the city and eventually connects into downtown, which you will see how that kind of works towards the end of the video, because I've got a big cinematic at the end which just flies across all of this area to show you a little bit of how these different intersections and areas relate to one another, because it's not very obvious from just looking at this. It's a little bit disjointed, I think. So with the sort of highway access here, I actually came back to this junction later on because I wasn't completely happy with how some of the details were working. What I am doing, although I'm not using, as I say, the CSUR mod, I am adding a lot of detail to the roads themselves. So I am putting lines and decals and things like that onto the roads, which is kind of time consuming, I have to admit. And really, highway construction is, I think it's probably my least favourite pastime in City Skylines. I don't particularly enjoy building these things, but it's something you have to do, and obviously it's just part of the nature of city building. But I do find that these highways and intersections in particular do take quite a long time, and as I say, it's not my favourite part of the build. I am putting a little kind of rail yard next to the highway here. This is not the main one, I don't think. It's just a smaller yard here, but it's going to be detailed at some stage. But at this stage, what I'm doing is just putting the tracks in, and that's really what this is about. It's just getting some of this infrastructure set there so that I can come back to it later on and just detail it up a little bit more. And this rail line here eventually will connect to the main rail line, the city. Now, that bridge in the background was part of the original map. Already had that rail bridge there, which is going to go. I'm not going to leave that as it is because it looks a little bit unrealistic, just a massive bridge. I want to put the rail line on the ground at some point, but yeah, at this stage there's a few little kind of place markers there that will need to be updated as I go forward in the build. So this is the Warner Bridge, and this is just a workshop asset I use for this. I spent a considerable amount of time building the swing bridge, which you may have watched in one of the earlier episodes of New Falmouth, but I didn't want to do anything too complicated with that. In case you're wondering what this is me playing around with Move It, just the import-export. What you can do is highlight areas of a city, and that's including everything: trees, buildings, props, decals, the lot, and export that. And I've been playing around with that for a few weeks now, because I managed to get my save game open for Santa Caprizia, which I'd mentioned in episode 9, and I'm hopeful that I can actually begin work on Santa Caprizia in the coming weeks. So look out for potentially a new episode for Santa Caprizia, which would be interesting. It doesn't mean I'm stopping New Falmouth. In fact, New Falmouth, if anything, it's made me focus more on this city. Now I know I can kind of almost grab parts of other cities and then import them in. So this particular area here, which is a kind of a scrapyard or a car breaker's yard, was something I built in Santa Caprizia, and I copied and effectively exported it from that city and into New Falmouth. So the Move It import export tool that you will find in the Move It menu is a really brilliant way of not only almost backing up your city, because you can copy and paste elements of it into other cities, but it's also a way of filling out your city and adding other details in, particularly intersections. I could imagine almost making an entire map just of intersections, just literally a flat map full of intersections, and then you can save each intersection as a separate file or document using the export tool in Move It, and then simply import them into your city. And I think that's going to be quite a big sort of time-saving tool, really, because as I say, for me, it takes a long time to build these kind of intersections and things, and I probably will be using some of the intersections I made in Santa Caprizia and bringing them into New Falmouth. So anyway, this is just what I'm doing here is obviously I've found that bridge on the workshop. I can't remember the name of the bridge now, but I know I'm not even going to attempt to remember it because I'm going to be completely wrong. But I just thought it looked really good, that bridge in this particular location, and I did convert that to PO just because the width of the bridge was a little bit narrow, so I needed to increase the width slightly. So yeah, I mean, I use PO just to sort of tweak a lot of the buildings and structures and things. Even if I don't do too much of the actual editing, a PO is a really useful way to actually edit some of your buildings to make them fit in effect. So this is now working on Highway 9. So this area here is very close to North End, and I guess the Old Town a little bit further on, as is the downtown. And it's really quite a unusual highway because it sort of snakes around the hillside here, above the city. And I struggled a little bit in terms of getting some kind of realistic looking intersection in, because of the hills and stuff. You find it's quite tricky to sort of position your off ramps when you've got a lot of hills. So in the end, you'll see again, particularly in the cinematics, there's a couple of intersections. This is the second one actually that I'm showing you on this video, but the first one was kind of similar, but it did mean you have to do some slightly unusual things with the roads to get the off ramps to kind of go over and under the highway, just because of the terrain here. It's surprisingly steep. It doesn't look it there, but it is surprisingly steep, and particularly on one side. So I had to do some sort of little bit of jiggery pokery with the off ramps there to get those working. Now this intersection from Highway 9 here is going to be one of the main kind of access points to downtown New Falmouth. It's going to be pretty busy, I think, this intersection once the downtown is built, because the downtown is not going to be a huge city centre. It's certainly not as big as what I imagined Santa Caprizia, my other city, would be. That city I always thought was going to be much bigger in terms of its kind of vibe and stuff, whereas New Falmouth has a much more modest scale, a sort of more kind of medium-sized city, I guess. But nevertheless, because of the position there, wedged in between the coast and the hillside there, it's still going to have to be reasonably dense sort of city centre. So there will be a few towers and things, a few skyscrapers, but nothing too dramatic. I'm going to keep this as kind of realistic as I can visually. So I'm not going to go crazy with putting in loads of, you know, skyscrapers everywhere. We're coming towards the end of the video, actually. The last part of this video, you'll see me doing some procedural object decal creation. Now, in case you wonder what that is, it's me adding some kind of signage to place onto the highway. It'll make sense when you see it, but I'm going to be signing off in a minute. Stick around for the end of this video because there is a big long cinematic which will just show you a little bit more. There's a few other intersections I haven't shown on here, including quite a complex, I guess it's a clover, I'm not sure it's a clover leaf, I can't remember the name of the type of the intersection, but you'll see that first of all in the cinematic, which is right at the other end of Highway 9. So stick around for that, and that'll also give you a little bit of an overview in terms of the city and the different areas and how the highway kind of runs through and connects everything together. So this is me creating this decal that I mentioned about. But anyway, guys, I'm going to be signing off in a minute, so I hope everybody's staying fit and healthy and enjoying the summer. So until episode 11, and hopefully episode 10 of Santa Capricia. We'll have to see when I can get that out, but hopefully in the coming days. Until then, I shall bid you farewell and see you next time.